Alright, that was come goma, Suda, Sume Kamji, Chikutunga Shabatelia, Anitelia, Devanajin Devigel, Mida Halatunga Yubana Shinji Yomares, in the Carriores in a Kawatuji Tunga Sedi, Yudebares, Tesada, Ramamiaba, Leda Numo, Ungi Kewalemba Iza, and it Session Wakazi, Devinea, and Nichigan. Devi ring delia Horanzolia, and the chick, Deneke Ganga Mevarucine, Deneke Rame by Shinimichi Shishin, and Manga Solma Kevalemba Yunguri, Esseshi, Casanti Nishiro.
Good morning. So last night we looked at the sufferings that are experienced by beings in the two upper realms, namely the form and formless realms. And whilst beings born there do not experience the suffering of physical mental happiness, the suffering of physical mental pain, they nevertheless do experience all-pervasive suffering of conditionality. So no matter how long they abide in their realm, enjoying the happiness of concentration, due to the power of previously accumulated contaminated karma, death will come, and death will be followed by rebirth in a realm lower to where they currently abide.
Salet may matemba, or Anzuda, Zumbling, Sajil, Tintugo, Debi Lada, Debi me, Debi Dundro, the said again to get Sajil Tinkore. Tis not that the nigger Suda Sume said, Sajil Matimbach, Conozo near Kahashi Yavare, yours, then if yours more.
The world we live in, this is a world that has a material basis. So this planet Earth, this Earth which is inhabited by humans, animals, and some unseen beings. But those born in the form and formless realm, they do not require a physical abode such as what we have. So this, maybe you could say, a planet comprised of matter. They do not require such a material abode.
Enzadan Anzu Dubai Gansaji, Dubai Hada Mijigida, Gewachima, Nas Sudan Sumelia, Gewa Lembaina, and the Ganes Kuganesa Lamna, and Ganeskiwa Lingolamna, that is not something Dambo de la Gewa Lembala, and to Dubi no more Rabon Yo at the Yama Bango Ware, Dubi Rabon Yo at the Game Dim Mabana, and Deep Bang by that Dubi Rabon Yo at the Game of Bangodu, and Jugi. Come Gomaki, Gujis Savare. Tini Zata Kadesi or Sene, Tango Dubi Rabanum on you at the Canes Pangore Labna, Telea, Lam Goya Delia, Chita, Shirana Machi, Lam said, Chica, de Comia Yores, Shirana Machi, Lam said, Devalia, and the Setong Tong, Nena, the Mambo, Ganga, Mongo, but the nigger, Shu, Ganga, you but Pa, do say some time, Dele Rapa. The Rapa said, I Ganga, you but some time. That Della did that sometimes number Bam as a Dunga Nung, Seringbo, and the chick, the Niki Wuresha Sempeke, pay sure some taje, the nigger some tane, the Nigi Shirana Machi, Lamting is in Combala, Dene, who's comodium, and then Ansapchilia, the Nigi, and you magic to be Rapa, when you are the Pang, the Nezawaki, Game ever search in Chagores, Cesandeliana, to be Rapa, when you Pompicata, Rapago, said the Toba is or. That is the way Kansade. The Nigger Kansade, the new top Saneda, the Nigger top Saned, the Manyan Bache, she saw by na, Giwachimaka, Kawakiwalingas, some that Bambodilla Giwalingo, Asia, or Dusine, Giwardiman. On to Kasan Tire.
And last night also presented how a desire realm, a human or God, can attain rebirth as a form or formless realm God. So the cause that they need to cultivate is to develop the concentration of the first, to develop the concentration that is the concentration of the first concentration. So this is a prerequisite because by developing the level of concentration equivalent to, or that the level of concentration that is the concentration of the first form, the first concentration of the form realm, one needs to suppress the coarse manifest afflictions of the desire realm, or suppress the manifest afflictions of the desire realm, which are coarse. And this is done by, and this is a term as the translator didn't know last night, this is the correct translation, this is done by examining the peaceful and coarse aspects of the respective realm. So what this means is that in this particular instance, although the process is replicated as one progresses, in this instance, the meditator reflects on the coarse aspects of the desire realm and the peaceful aspects of the first concentration, recognizing how unlike our experience here in the desire realm, beings born in the first concentration have long lives, and long lives where they experience such incredible happiness, with the happiness of concentration. And the afflictions of the desire realm, these are suppressed, so therefore they are not experienced, and the resulting other forms of suffering that come with those afflictions. So in this way, by seeing the faults of the desire realm and the benefits of the first concentration, then the practitioner develops their single-pointed concentration, their calm abiding, into the concentration that is the first concentration of the form realm. And when death comes for this practitioner, then they will die, and due to the power of these karmic imprints, they will be reborn from the desire realm into the first concentration of the form realm.
Andina Shinda, Jibara, Jama, something Nibala, Yaina, that Devigi Tambo, Devala Rabada, some that double Shiva, Lam Gomche, Devinumon, you are bang. Dene, Mando Devitin, the Sorda, Dene Gazadi. Dene Yang Gazadi, that Disana, Delian, or some that Dambo de la Des Rabada, tell it to the something nibody, Yaha, some Dushin, some that Dambo, some Dambola Rabada, something Nibala Shiva Daji, Shirana Bachi Lamcom, Dene Comje, Dene, something Dabu in your Moapang, Dene Kewalemban, Shine, Mania Machine, Kewalemban, something Nibala Kirore. That Dene. Ya dinu du sinu kom korongi dine kom jene dube tin delia samda dabo nibo sumba shiba din rimba sinu kom je ta jiyame siji badum kom ya yore je jesa ta jiyame ge ta thosho jiyame ge dela raba samda dela de ta siji set be ma si shiwa shiure sambe samda shirana ba je lam kom du sine kom je dine jiyame manje ge nyomo ba chasa monjuwa ba so ba ina dine anu korongi dine Manyambaji, she saw by that dinner, Kawaki recently, Sisi said, Gigor, Asia. On Dusine, a debate and La Chassan compare you de Palais. Then Cable Yan to debate the member, Tambo Debala Rapate, some Tambo Shiva, and no come near, Tenichi when he Kewal and some the Tambo Kewalian. Then some the Dambi Tin Della, and some the Tambola Rapat and Della to the something Nibali Shiva Taja, Dusino Comjea, Kewal and Bayungores. Says that something suit on Sumele Kewal and Hadi. You didn't son, Yawalen Guri, as you did it. Sisi Pado. The troop has something about you and then the artist to sense vision by some dry young resident.
So this process of examining the peaceful and coarse aspects of the respective realm. So again, that was the term I didn't know last night. So this process, one continues to engage in so as to, if one wishes, of course, to develop one's concentration from the first concentration to the second and from the second to the third. So the process is the same. One looks at the current state one has attained, recognizing its unpleasant aspects, and sees the more favorable aspects of the level above what one has attained. And in this way, one develops the next level of concentration. So in this is the same process to progress from the desire realm to the first concentration of the form realm, and to progress from the first concentration of the form realm to the second concentration of the form realm, and in fact right through not just the 4 levels of the form realm, but also through the 4 levels of the formless realm, right up to the 4th level of the formless realm, the peak of cyclic existence. So all of these various levels of concentration and absorption can be achieved by a human or God of the desire realm. So whilst they are a being of the desire realm in the body of a being of the desire realm, but developing these minds of the form realm and then the formless realm. And when death comes, they will take rebirth in that level, that respective level that they of the form or formless realm that they have attained. The second approach can be, let's say, a being of the second concentration in the form realm. So a God of the second concentration of the form realm, they can develop their concentration further into the third level of the third concentration or the 4th concentration, or into the formless realm. So that is another means of progression. It doesn't have to be done in the desire realm. It can be further developed from the form realm too.
Dene gita shira namba chinye lam sayade, dene lam gomya dila shira namba chinye lam sayade, dadi china tumo we lam re le gore. Dene nganzo nangbe gomya gom gore, an gomba yung gore, ane chiro ba de gom gore, chita niga gom gore, da china tumo we lam re eseo.
This approach of examining the coarse and the peaceful and coarse aspects of the respective realm, this is a method common to both Buddhists and non-Buddhists. In other words, non-Buddhists too engage in such meditation.
Dina shidang an zuge lam ngone ba sayadi da an zuge lam nyamne chayadi da dimbe namba chinge lam dimbe ne shisa da kunju demba dunga demba da kunju demba nyela ya rakwa ta ndela ane tarbi ge tarba sayadi shiwa ta je ndela ya ane tarba topde ge samba chi gomba dila lam nyamne chaba dila da dimbe namba chi lam nyamne ba se da di lam chinge ba ngone ba chago re di nambal ma to shen go mere jesa dine za da an zuge 다 당보 초람 깨발아야 당보 신이 죽되네 신이 죽에 톱내되네 바 초람 깨고 그래서 직제 다 초람 톱내야 지미 신이 톱사래 에 되네 초람 내야 졸람 와포 토요도 네 가사 다음에 발에 미비 실라 손리시 톱여도 되네 초람 내 졸람 토고 그래서 어두스지는 안 되게 저다로 있대네. 제가 람 줄라게 방아주 덴베 남제 람 초람게 졸람게 시티아데라 다디 섬 나보니가 차차라 내가 기시가 말아 대신에 지나 투모 람을 나베오 공바여 치료베오 공여서 기시에서 와다 디시 뭐세 다 가르고서 나보가 초람 줄라게 와라 신의 죽제 신의 토고 그래제 신의 주고 그래 신의 톱되네 신의 초람 지제선 디시그로 초람 토에도 대변의 동안에 뭐 군진 대발라 라바다 될라더니 시 녀만 법에 타바들 시와데 타바동에 삼바게 오로와 이제 타바동에 삼바 쩌마면 바게도 초람 줄에 깨와로와 제자디 초람 줄에 깨와라 신이 주고 그래서라고 만신의 숙체면서 기심에다 간절량도 삼단 당부 기시고 말다다 다 삼단 기심마셔야 향도 초람나 졸람 토에 줘로와 제가 람 귤에 깨와라 당보 소람 귤에 깨와라 소람 귤에 깨와라 단 당보 신의 주지 신의 토고 그래서 소람 깨고래서 신의 토고 그래서 다 되네 소람 내야 졸람 내야 포용돼 나 다음에 발음이 배 신의 실라 손대서 토고 그래서 니 기시거다.
So there's a method that is common, that what I've just presented is the method that is common or shared with both Buddhists and non-Buddhists. Buddhists, though, would be wanting to develop mental paths that lead to liberation and enlightenment. So therefore, their motivation to develop calm abiding would be in accordance with the wish to develop a path and progress towards liberation and enlightenment. So they would strive to develop calm abiding, and having developed calm abiding, they would reflect on, they develop calm abiding further and develop the union of calm abiding and meditative insight, and they would then reflect on the Four Noble Truths. So this is the method, again, it's the second term I didn't know last night, of examining the aspects of the Four Noble Truths. So here, they are not engaging in the course and the examining the peaceful and coarse aspects of the respective realm, but they rather are examining the aspects of the Four Noble Truths. So they reflecting principally on true sufferings and true origins, and thereby the need to cultivate true paths in order to achieve true cessations. And in this way, they develop calm abiding and meditative insight, develop definite emergence, and the path of accumulation. In order to progress from the path of accumulation to the path of preparation, they need to have, with this same mind, the union of calm abiding and meditative insight, they need to realize emptiness. So it's a far subtler object than that of cultivating definite emergence. And this, but when the union of calm abiding and meditative insight can realize selflessness or emptiness, that far subtler object, then progression is made from the path of accumulation to the second of the five paths, the path of preparation.
다데네 안주딘 바시에 안주다데 안주시에데 가르시오신 딤베 남바칭에 람냠리 림바디 시고레 시자 딤베 남바칭 냠리 시두 동아딤바도 꾸준내라 라바 균딘디레 샤시에 데네 안에 델레 탈비게 탈바세디 시월에 세디 시고레 제가 데네 장안주 가르시 중에서 계신수 가르시바레라나 안에 마송의 동아 안에 미 동아 사만이 동아 되별해 동아 다디네 수다 수메기 안에 할래 동아디네 요래서 시에도 다디 디수 균을 라바레서 라바세도 균을 고고를 다디 체중 말에 체중다 말에 갑래 라바세도 첨보라지나 참바세도 충충을 고야 여러분 니 말에 다디 라바세도 균세로 균딘데네 요래 강하다 균딘데 요래서야디 어디시 라바세 제가다 데니기 델레 타르바다 묘몬바 데니기 빵베 타르바스 토베나다 시월에 균균이 디스 강아디 요 말에 시월에서 시고로와 제가 데니기 시월이 되녀기 타르바세 되녀기 dum바딩 아주 그렇게 데토베체도 람냠네 제고로와 데니자 다당 아주 가르시오선데다 지자 시라 남바징에 가서 데메 남바징에 람냠네 시용 반자다 아주겠다 다트바도 시에디다 동아녀 몬바가소레 냐와 이다 둔로 하다 미다 대수에 강아 든든든데 요래서 시에다 디 라바디게 코웰이야 라바다비 라바스 삼단 시고래.
So the path that is the technique that is common to Buddhists and non-Buddhists is called examining the peaceful and coarse aspects of the respective realm. Buddhists, though uniquely, would engage in the technique called examining the aspects of the Four Noble Truths. There's some similarity in terms of understanding or maybe approach between the two. So the common one is referring to examining the peaceful and coarse aspects of the respective realm. So there's these terms here, peace and coarse, peaceful and coarse aspects. This is, that understanding is utilized when examining the aspects of the Four Noble Truths, so the uncommon technique that are solely of Buddhists. But it's not in relation to varying realms, but it's in relation to being bound in samsara and being liberated from samsara. So when the Buddhist is looking to cultivate concentration by means of examining the aspects of the Four Noble Truths. They'll look at the coarse aspects, and here coarse means faults. Normally it's coarse means as like rough, not fine, but here coarse means faults. So examining the faults of cyclic existence by means of reflecting on true sufferings and true origins. And they examine the peaceful aspects of liberation through examining true cessations and the paths by which to gain them. So this is the meditation on the Four Noble Truths. So when the practitioner is meditating on the coarse aspects of cyclic existence, they'll meditate on true sufferings and true origins, and how to meditate on true sufferings. We've looked at some of this last year when we looked at the sufferings of the lower realms. And this rest of the presentation, the majority of the presentation, we have just finished looking at now, whereby one looks at the general sufferings of samsara as presented through the eightfold presentation of suffering, the sixfold presentation of suffering, the threefold presentation of suffering. And then we looked at the individual or the particular sufferings of the higher realms, of the human realm, then the desire realm, God realms, and then the form and formless realm, form and formless God realms. So it's through meditating on suffering in these ways, by means of these various presentations, as well as then true origins, and then true paths and cessations, that the practitioner engages in this method to cultivate concentrations, the method called examining the aspects of the Four Noble Truths.
Bendigo da nyawa da ngaso da mida debel ha dene ane sudan sumigi kasa dikelia denege dunga yoba di du chen samda da dene samda da dunga di yoba na denege kanga di gyugarel chware sidu danga dunga de mekor ma shusene ade tensin na sheba dunga sheba cha sedi dunga de mekor shedi da dunga da hagore da dunga sheba cha sidu da dunga gyudi karres 다 제수 동아디게다 되발에 안솔라 되네 용고 동아 망보 용 되발에 되별 하다 밀에 되네 강아 망보 용도 와스 되네 수도 수멜라 할래 되네 강아도 용도 되네게 동아디게다 유가를 되네 중고래에서야 귤을 찌바지 요다 안도 군주된 바세야 돼 되네게 주 군주된 바래 세대 디코슈고 제산다 유군주된 바세 가르래 세대다 되는 망어도 디 아니 귤레다 네 귤이 군주된 바래 레다 녀몽바니들에서 다 레다 녀모바니레스 세상 제네산 다 레다 녀모바 진이나다 조디 다 녀모바레스 다 디용아주 유군주된 바 거슈야레 되는 마다.
So now we're about to start the next chapter. So the link between what we've been looking at for some time and what we are about to start is that we've been reflecting on the first truthful areas, true sufferings. We reflected on the tremendous suffering that beings in the lower realms experience, but recognize too that nowhere in the higher realms is one free of suffering, whether it's in the higher realms of the desire realm as a human or God, or in the upper realms as a form or formless realm God, one still experiences suffering. In particular, through this presentation, one comes to recognize that feelings of suffering, of course, are suffering, but feelings of happiness merely mask suffering, and neutral feelings too end up in suffering. And by reflecting well on suffering, this is coming to know suffering. So the Buddha said the first noble truth must be known, the second must be abandoned. So by this way, we come to know suffering, that all contaminated feelings result in or either suffering or result in suffering, or end up in suffering rather. So in this way, one comes to know suffering. This then leads to the deep yearning to know what is the cause of suffering, the origin of suffering, in order to know what to avoid and eventually abandon so that one never has to experience suffering again. So the first noble truth is to be known, the second is to be abandoned. So this second truth, true origins, is the origin of our suffering, the origin of our individual samsaras. So this then is the next presentation.
Nibala som sirida anjego kunjö deba nibo kunjö deba dunga dime yu kunjö deba sheba dela da kunjö deba samta dela ya anu sumyores karayasne nyomo ba kiwi chu dele le soso ani chipowa da inzam jubi chu lo se des session maso de sumje.
So now we're turning to the text. So we're at page 167, and this is titled Mental Afflictions. So the actual title in the Tibetan is Contemplating the Stages of Involvement in Cyclic Existence, the Origins. So this is then True Origins, and it has 3 points. The first is the title of this chapter, Mental Afflictions, how the mental afflictions arise. And then the next 2 points are in the 13th chapter on page 173, I think. Yeah. How karma is thereby accumulated and how you die, transmigrate, and take rebirth.
Nyomoba kiwi tsuishi jide dang nyomoba dila garesine beneduecha kondo ngaya marikpa ni tesum anchisola tawas antarzime tawa choji tsurimna tuju chosin ni lokta sedi dade delia nyomoba janga jurubish gore.
Here we now come to look at the origin of suffering. So origin or causes of suffering. And this is contaminated karma and our afflictions. Of the two, contaminated karma and afflictions, afflictions are the primary source of our suffering. So what are afflictions? So this will be presented over the page. There it's presented by a list of 10. So if you look over the page at 168, we have the 10, it's translated as desire, but it's attachment. Then anger, pride, ignorance, doubt, view of the transitory collection, view holding to an extreme, the view holding a bad view to be best, the view holding ethics and religious conduct to be best, and wrong views.
yu le nyun ni gui jiang nyomo ba zuo yin dang an zu ko le jie wa lian ba la le dan nyomo ba ni gu wo le ko ji yu de le dan nyomo ba le di ni gu wo le si ni gu wo le yin na di ni na de zuo de nyomo ba le sa de ko ju bi yu le dan nyomo ba ni gui jiang an nyomo ba zuo yin in this.
So top of this chapter on page 167, we see this chapter comprises of one main outline, how the mental afflictions arise. So we'll look at that now. There's an introduction on this page, and over the page starts its 3 subdivisions. So how the mental afflictions arise. Although both karma and mental afflictions are necessary as causes that establish cyclic existence, the mental afflictions are primary. So here we have both causes of samsara mentioned, and of the two, mental afflictions are primary. So this introduction to the outline how mental afflictions arise is presenting and now answering or explaining why mental afflictions are primary. So this part of the page is about why the mental afflictions are primary. So reading from the text, this is because if there are no mental afflictions, even though there is karma beyond counting accumulated previously, and then the Tibetan skips ahead, just as a sprout is not established from a seed that lacks humidity, soil, and so forth.
Zadang also Karaswars in the Tambo Petile Tisudua, Pigeon Saban Juba in Ea, Delia, and the Saban Nukia, Sadang, and the May Jeta Chu Lendi Yuko Jazada Saban Nukia, Gateway, Saban Juba in Ea, Delia, Sadang, and the Chuda, Jedi, Gindi, Sangmena, and the called Nuki to Marwas. The Pedinashi, and the Yemane. Ansola Gia, the Niki Lepa to Meba Sasha by Yunayang, Tizatang Yomo Mena, and the Yomo body Meba search of King Yomo body Mebana, Ansola Gia, you part of Meba Yurdina, King Yomo body Mena, and Ansola Kitu Mares, King Mares, Bena, and Chuda, Sada, Dragi, King Masavigita, Saban Najiri.
So read it again, just the order of the translation of the segments of the section are different from the Tibetan, hence we for now are skipping a bit. So the reason here is given, this is because if there are no mental afflictions, even though there is karma beyond counting accumulated previously, and then the illustration is given, just as a sprout is not established from a seed that lacked humidity, soil, and so forth. So this if you have a seed, but it's not planted in the correct soil with the right amount of warmth and humidity, it's not going to sprout. Likewise, with karmic seeds, even though on one's continuum there may be an abundance of karmic seeds, without the ripening factor or the ripening condition of the ripening condition of the afflictions, those karmic seeds will stay dormant. They cannot ripen if the afflictions are absent. In the next part of the sentence, just up a little, so this is now in Lama Tsongkhapa explaining the illustration, since the cooperative conditions for karma are absent, the sprout of suffering is not established. So again, as explained, the karmic seeds remain dry as long as they cannot be moistened by the ripening conditions of the afflictions.
Dan yomo yoba in angar lesa bige, Dangason gig, Dunganua lesa, that lesa sanedini, King yomo bashobaina, Yomo yobaina, that di kinjinema, Dunga legitibu Mimba Junguris, or the jikche. That dine, and it lesa ba mena young, and then yomo bazoi mena ya, Yomo yena, then yomo by the member Mazubane, Yomo by the Yomo by the lesa cycles. Sawa Cyrus, Nargi, Saji, Menaya, Numobaki, Numobaki, Le Sawa Saji, and Lamsa Sawa Saji, the Nipumbo, Gewachima, Mason Gelengi, Gu Saji, Gewachima, Mason Gewalemba Jungori, Numo Yuna, Narsa Meja, Narsa Bele, Menayang, Numobadiki, Dematado, Sardo Sani, Mason Geg, Le Sardo Saji. Then Pumbochima Lembe Chiros, Jezada, Pumbochima, Masonikio, Moscow Lingores.
So if we're looking here in this paragraph, the end of the second line, the second sentence, this is because. So here, two reasons are presented why afflictions are primary. The first reason, which has just been mentioned, looks backwards. So past accumulated karma cannot ripen if the afflictions are absent. Now, the second reason is presented, but it is forward-looking. So reading on from the text, it is also because if the mental afflictions are present, even without any previously accumulated karma, karma is immediately accumulated anew and future aggregates will be appropriated. So this is then the second reason, and it's forward-looking. So if one imagines the theoretical possibility of being completely free of karma, when an affliction ripens, immediately, in that moment, further karmic imprints will be accumulated, which will lead, and being contaminated, they will lead to the appropriation of aggregates. So the second reason is forward-looking.
다 나서는 게 유사매는 아주 냐마 사베 경서기 유 레사매나양 녀모보여와네 녀모보이디 긴진에 레가서기 레사바 사바람사 사바사이스 사바사제디네 아니 딩아서기 알레마 용구리에스 제자다 녀모바도 쫓아와 임바 김세로 있티네
The summary meaning here is, wherever one is born in samsara, whether in the lower realms or the higher realms, whether the higher realms are in the desire form or formless realm, wherever one is born in samsara, the reason remains the same, karma and afflictions. And wherever one is born in samsara, of these two, karma and afflictions, the afflictions remain primary. And the reasons are, as presented here, twofold. One, backward-looking, in that previously accumulated karmic imprints are ripened by the afflictions. And if afflictions were to be absent, previously accumulated karmic imprints could not ripen. That's the first reason. And the second is forward-looking. And that is that through the arisal of the afflictions, karma is immediately accumulated. So for these two reasons, we recognize that of the two causes for uncontrolled rebirth in samsara, karma and afflictions are primary.
네. 나디네 남제레스 다디 안디나리 가르선 대야 대대로야 남제레스 CBC레 남거비 레신 편유마인데 현지 제바 세시로 셰당스 아니 세바니 유엔알라리아 중호 유엔알라리아 중시로스
Lama Tsongkhapa then quotes from the commentary on the compendium of valid cognition. For those who have passed beyond craving for existence, karma cannot impel any more rebirths, because the cooperating factors have been exhausted, and for if craving is present, they will reoccur.
나 CB 셀레 남가비 레신 피니 마인데스도 돈다 디시바 지바레 제단 시바 코와레 끼와이레 윤주 세바 넘버 가와 세발 파메바 쇠샤바이나 메바이나 아니 레 미니 콩아선의 계획이 윤주 레 셴바여 세발레 셴레 셴여바이나야 아니 마 나선의 핀뉴 말이 끼두 말이 핀뉴바 마인세 마인데 maybe 김제 가르스네 페미누버 김제 가르스네 델렌지지게 세바디 maybe 세 서비스 세비치 빵비치서
Look at the first two lines. For those who have passed beyond or transcended craving for existence or samsara, karma cannot impel. Normally we say propelling, as in propel a rebirth, or others say throw a rebirth. Karma cannot impel or propel or throw any more rebirths. And the reason for this is as presented above. For a being who has passed beyond craving for existence, meaning they no longer have afflictions, although they have karma on the second line, they will have karma on their continuum. That karma, not being able to encounter cooperative conditions, it cannot ripen. And therefore, they will not take rebirth in samsara again.
세바니 유엔알라리아 중시로 시도시 송베시로스 지산 세바 유엔나 지산단 사본 Yama le ngason ke le sa sha ba sa le yo ba che dine seba nyomo ba ba yo ba ne ho le ke wa lingires ha la yang si du da ben ngason le tar che di jing nga du she ba ne su me la le ya ke wa len ba ina yang su me la le ke wa len ba ina yang ta ko seba ma ba yin zang la yang ane di gi kin che ma ngason le ke wa yung gres ha seba yena ngason ke yu le sarba sa che ya ja ane ngason le ke wa yung gres che la yang ki shi ros jung chi ros.
And then the next single line, for if craving is present, they will reoccur. So we see in the first line above, craving is absent. So this is for someone who has transcended or passed beyond samsara. They no longer have afflictions. Whereas if the affliction of craving is still present, now the fourth line, they will reoccur. In other words, previously accumulated karmic imprints will be ripened, propelling rebirth. So this will happen. And this is the case wherever one is in cyclic existence. And it's not just the case for us in the desire realm, within the lower or higher desire realms, also for those in the form and formless realm, those gods too. If their craving has not been abandoned, they too will take rebirth again, because they are still bound in samsara. They are not liberated from samsara. And their rebirth, propelled by the karmic imprint, ripened by craving, will lead to rebirth in a realm lower than what they are in.
다디 대신한테 쉬야디단 저 요래 나중에 대비게 간사지기 나 대비 간사지 시라나마지 람곰제 아니 되발바네 나자마와 강한 망부여바 삼다 델레데 삼데 담보디 시워시워레 선비게 시워된 곰비게 곰제 데니게 띵이 좀 보면도 아니 간삼질 양아도 대비라바 대비 녀모 봉원주와 되게 기에메바 응고레스 방향고레스 제사다 데 간사데 시르데 가와키그레스 삼데 담보리 기글리 기와링게스 되바기와 밀레비 김자가레스나다 되비 녀모 법방사로와 원주와 방을 매바로와 제사데 되바기와 렌투고 되바기와 렌발레 되비 녀모 보고고레 레다 녀모 옹게 기와 렌발라 되비 녀모 고고 되비 녀모 메나 되발라 레니 옹게 기와 레아지 용고 말레 제사디레.
So we can link what we've seen here to what we looked at last night, in that a desire realm being, seeing the great benefits of developing not just calm abiding, but the first concentration, then they'll strive by means of the method of examining the peaceful and coarse aspects, they will achieve the first concentration. And so they now are a desire realm being, in the desire realm with a desire realm body, but they've achieved the mind or the first concentration. And as said last night, when death comes, their rebirth will be in the form realm, in the first concentration. And the reason for that is because in order, or through achieving the first concentration of the form realm, the desire realm afflictions are suppressed. This means when death comes, there are not desire realm afflictions to propel a rebirth. Rephrase that. There are not manifest desire realm afflictions to propel the next rebirth, or as translated here, impel the next rebirth. But the being is not free from samsara. They have attained the first concentration of the form realm, and therefore the afflictions of the first concentration are manifest for them. Those afflictions will ripen their propelling karmic imprint, which will lead to rebirth in that first concentration. This means without desire realm afflictions, or at least without the manifest, rebirth cannot be in the desire realm, or cannot be taken in the desire realm.
다디 녀모바디 조인비 김전지제 레다 녀모 동아 마 코알레 개발레 유 레다 녀모바 이기나네다 녀모바 조인비 김전 마슈사제 나데네 녀모바 조인자다 나도 녀모바데 방고고르바 디치르스 nyomobe nyembo temba galchela deya nyomoba shebala ra lebe nyomoba namla kebar chawos.
So again, in this 12th chapter, in True Origins, there are 3 points, one of which is in the 12th chapter. So we've looked now at the introduction to that 1 point, how the mental afflictions arise, which is presenting that the afflictions are principal, primary, rather than karma. Now we continue over the page on top of 168. Therefore, it is crucial that you rely on the antidotes to the mental afflictions, and that depends on knowing the mental afflictions, which is why you should become conversant with them.
nyomobo yobaine nyomobe kin le sabasaje no konga so le kyaling duas chesa di de nyomoba zo je duas yumsen de ne inzang and nyomoba di nyomoba le nyimbo tianje tian de be ge shimbo le se nyomobe nyimbo tianba la ga chelas chesa nyomoba le nyimbo tianje nyomoba ba de be ge shisho de nyimbo tianje ba mo le ge shisho le chesa da nyomobe nyimbo tianba la yang nyomoba di nyomoba la nyomo sheba la ra le pe nyomo ba da ha go go le dine jile nyomo ba di de sha di ro kong ro di de ma ri ba di de nyomo be ni su da ha go go le ji za ha go ne dine nyomo de ni ma ting go ro ra le pe ji nyomo ba nam la ke ba cha wo se de ji za nyomo ba nyimbo tian ba la nyomo ba da ha go go xin go go le ji za dine za nyomo ba nam la ke ba cha wo se de nyomo ba di re dine ti ma dine je se de nyomo digi pa 심주지 제바제제 하고 와지 오래서 캐버자 오래서 하고 와서는 시에는 얘를 하고 와지 오래서
Starts with the word therefore. Therefore then indicates that reasons have just been given, and the reasons again that why afflictions are primary is that if afflictions are absent, past accumulated non-virtue will not ripen, and no new non-virtue can be accumulated. Then one is liberated. Whereas if the afflictions are present, those afflictions serve as the cooperative conditions to ripen past accumulated karma and leads to the accumulation of further karma. So this then makes clear why afflictions are of great importance. The abandonment of the afflictions is of great importance. Therefore, it is crucial that you rely on the antidotes to the mental afflictions. So we've understood now that the afflictions, it's imperative one abandons the afflictions in order to gain freedom from the suffering that we've been meditating on for a while. But so therefore it is crucial that you rely on the antidotes to the mental afflictions, and that depends on knowing the mental afflictions. So this part of the sentence is the introduction to what will follow. In that, in order to abandon the afflictions, one has to rely on the antidotes, but one needs to know what one is applying antidotes towards. What are these afflictions? One cannot abandon something if one cannot recognize it. So that depends on knowing the mental afflictions, which is why you should become conversant with them. And this nice word, conversant, usually would be translated as you should become learned or knowledgeable with regard to them.
Dine zadang nyomo ba kisu she de nyomo ba di ki chewa che ne le da nyomo ba ki chewa che dene nyomo ba di aya ngo so wa che da dene zada nyomo ba di le de ni ba ni de la sum le se da de la nyomo be gi ko she ga de la sum yo le se da dang bo nyomo ba se ka re se de ngo so wa che nyomo ba ngo so wa se nyomo de sha se de jo kong ro se de ne re se pa di mo soya chila mo so wa che dene ganiski gore sine jide ki be rimba ki thang rimba di che dene nyomo be yemik so za nyomo be gyuen di ki du sam da na che du chin da ya sa je la sum ja gi do.
As we saw on the previous page, True Origins has 3 outlines. In this chapter, chapter 12, is 1 outline, and the other 2 come in the next chapter. this one outline has 3 subpoints. So now we've had the introduction to this outline, the manner in which the afflictions arise, and now we come to the 3 subpoints. So reading from the top of page 168, the actual identification of the mental afflictions, which is what we'll start to look at now, the stages by which they arise on the next page, and the faults of the mental afflictions over the page.
Da dinegi ngoyo songyo da dinegi ngoyo songyo dambo le juli se da dinegi yomo ngoyo songyo de la yomo ba ju yo re se de ji ma de ju chang ge de 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 da dinegi ma re ji juli dambo da dambo de sha de ka re la ne de sha ni qiam nan ge yu du ba yi du won wa le mi ne je su cha ba de pe na re la num shu par jung ga wa yung ga wa xin du diya rangi mi ba la xian jing che ba ni mi ba de da zhal ga wa
Looking at the first subpoint, the actual identification of the mental afflictions. This is 10 points. So 10 points in that the afflictions are presented as 10 here. So now to look at them each individually. The first of these, desire. So I've changed desire to attachment because that's just how it's usually translated. The first of these, attachment, and just to say it's the same word. The first of these, attachment, observes an attractive, pleasant, external or internal object and is subsequently attached to it. To illustrate, just as oil that has penetrated into cloth is hard to remove, it is also difficult to separate attachment from its object as it clings to it and intensifies.
yu duba idung wala migi des kawar migi sinda da ngajil yu di han chi am nang se de chi se de chi kang ba la so ba de xin do la so ba zi xian la so ba da de ne gi chi se de de ne zi wei chi che yang ji nang se de yang a ji gi mi lu la so ba da de ne gi to ne ne ji nang se de chi da nang se de du xin ne zi wei na denegi idong wala miche anjik miche na ne gar sore delya pe chesu chakwas ne gidina delya jik dile jik chase del pa jar diga semdi dinan jar midu jawa midu ba delya dedigan chela anjesu chapase ade da nang da suk yore sem nang sam lo yore da nang se di ga jele di chi se de ga ju ga sa da yu ma ju bi chi yu la so ba de che nang se den ga sa yu ju ba la so ba da pa ja we na chi da nang se de.
So first we look at the objects that one is attached to. So what the things are that one is attached to. So going in the order of the Tibetan, external or internal. So external refers to something, in this context, something external to the person. So this could be one's home, the natural environment, anything external to oneself, to the individual person themselves. Then the internal object refers to the person, so their body, as well as their inner world, their thoughts. So one can have attachment in relation to what one is thinking about. And that would be included in inner, in that the object that one is attached to is one's thought. And therefore it's inner. So this is the meaning of external or internal objects.
And della chava get and della jesu chachi simne di chola pa drojene and della by dramiduba deniba deba gila dici. Per that peroji savena rela num juba ungawa shinos re gilia. Duba da idung wala ne da kanshi chi yu le ne de yin chi wo du yang de sai du duba de idung wa se sem le ya chi kanshi le di ya wo du sem be sam lo chi ki go ba de ro wa re da chi yu le de ne di ya wo du sem be de cha ba ye ya wo du min du san ne cha ba ki ma ra na mi le ne lu le de ne di ya wo du sem ne cha ba ki go wa de ne ge kanshi le sem le ya idung wa ro chi cha yong du an di ne de le ya chi ge 차바기리 해야지 들어와 유디 에페로지가 사실은 저기 레알이야 눔 슈퍼 용가와 신도선 레알이야 눔지 거바이나 눔디파 레알이야 눔디 레나를 주파 심디에 파 매버셀이야 안에 깔아가고 여러와스 디나시 레디 눔디 레나를 심디바나시 착바디 유디레 이동와들레 바 직도선에 델야 자르고 레세치 인페네 신도 베레세 신도 디아랑게 미바라 신징 체바니 미바데다 자가오 오시 제사디니기 셈디 차바디기 리도 유텔이야 파 미제 파 진제 델야 베자가와레스 자가와지레스 갈하고 데니스 자가와레스
The first of those, attachment, observes an attractive or pleasant external or internal object. So I've explained external and internal in relation to the person, and the object is also seen as attractive or pleasant. And here we can understand these two terms as having the same meaning. One is attached to something, one finds attractive or pleasant. Then it continues with an illustration. Just as oil that has penetrated into cloth is hard to remove, it is also difficult to separate attachment from its object as it clings to it and intensifies. So this is how one experiences attachment, in that it almost seems to seep into its object, going deeper and deeper. In other words, that the attachment really seems to cling to the object in a way that it becomes almost impossible to stop thinking about it, so to separate one's mind from the object.
예, 나디 대서 아주게 유디래 듬바 해야 되나 듬바 된여 차와 해야 돼 로로라시 근데 예와 해야 돼 갈래고라시 도로에 내용 듬바 해야 되는 아주게 유디래 듬바 깨와네 이 약고래서 듬바 깨야도 듬바디 차와를 말아봐 이내 듬바디 유디를 봐 진제 델이야 지금 자미도 바로 차관 나신 되는 진도 바로 그 도로 차고로 봐.
There's another term that one can experience in a way that has some similarity to attachment, though it's not attachment, and that is it's usually translated as aspiration. In that one is one's mind has turned towards something and desires it. So in English here we would say you desire it. So this particular mind, though, would not be called one of attachment, but one of aspiration, where one aspires for something. So other translations will be yearning for something.
라바도 나중에 지게 가분이보다 되네이나 소수가 안가 콜을 제와 유에서나 대래 차트 받은 제와 일이 바 여체를 갈래 하고로시 지 델레 차바디 대소수기 제와로 중요소야로 있다. 되니기 냥아요래.
But so in English, what we call love for our loved ones, this is usually attachment, in that it becomes very difficult to separate this our attachment for this person.
네. 안되네. 지난다 델이야 차고지 기뒤갑라 델이야 추미이지에 세야지 유디 추미이지에서도 유디 로리야 차용도 무인니스의 미tun바 차위 로치리고래 무인니스의 미tun바지 로딜야 차제 되네 델이야 델이야는 직바 야고도 선 되어 진 가서 델이야 야고도 디 세 되어게 되게 로딜다 차발라고 그래. 차발라고. 제사다 주민시 당고 차발기에 계산들 나뭐 게임 주민시에서 차고 수도 미디미지 로디 유디 나변에 유디 닝지오지당 그런 매도로지 닝지오지 여바 인바실이야 만술이야 로리야 나이도 수도 미디바실 그런 게 의니수 야고 여바 딜레 됐어 로이 파줘다지 라마로지 nembarā kiache sus nangore. Dene ki nawa nashin delya chabayna, tati ngal kukudu sambayna, di ane Geshe Chapa is or the Chapa is.
First, just to say, as an aside, in relation to the previous point, so the attachment one has for a loved one in a romantic relationship. In Tibetan, the word love isn't used like we do in English, but it's actually the word like, that you like someone. So that shows the different way of relating to romantic relationships. Now to come back to what Genla just said. Attachment for something is as an immediately preceding condition of another consciousness, another mind. And this is improper mental engagement, or I think it's also called improper mental attention, or inappropriate mental attention maybe. Anyway, improper mental engagement. So the reason one is attached to something is because one finds it desirable. There's this I want. And this wanting comes about due to relating to this the thing that one is attached to in a way that is not in accordance with reality. In that, the role of the preceding condition of improper mental engagement is it exaggerates the good qualities of what then one becomes attached to, what then wants and is attached to. So take a flower. We have the color and shape of a flower appearing to one's mind. Improper mental engagement then exaggerates the good qualities of that flower, leading to the reaction of I want. So this is desiring the flower, being attached to the flower. So here, attachment is preceded by improper mental engagement, which distorts the object, exaggerating its good qualities.
Semjen namda da khondu kise yu ji shore semjen namda dunga da chen da cherma so dunga ye ne namla mi ne gune nar sembe sem sumo yu de namla ne ba chebe samba semba os de ne gi samno ji la khondu la gre shire.
Now to the second, that of anger. And I've just changed one word here to hopefully make it a little clearer. Anger is a hostile attitude. It is an unruly mind that, upon observing an origin of suffering, such as sentient beings, suffering, weapons and thorns, and so forth, intends to inflict harm on those objects.
Ne na se dunga ki de dunga le mi ne khon la yung re ne ane chen ma zui ne chen cha de ne gi le ya ne mi che khon la yung re da charma ji de ne gi gang ba la su ya de ne le de khon la yung ro de ne gi thon ne ane charma la de ne gi o du shi ne khon la yung re o de charma de xin na yi ma ji gang ba la su de se du khon la yo ro de ne gi di na xin da da Dinaji Semjeda, Dungadang, Chenda, Charma, Sok Lavide, Dinani Penny Samlo Mitumba, Jesole Mine, and the Corona Gurish, Jezade Dunga, Jesole Mine, that Dunga Yini, Namla, said, Tesuazule Dunga Ki, Kin Jesole in Yungurvada, Desan Dunga Dunga Yaki, Karayon, Shen Semje Yanzulia, Kangatation. Dunga je yin chi gong gore an ne na ze yang zu le chen dunga je yong gore an cha chen na cha ma lo so bi chen ji nga zo gang ba la ba ma xue ba da de ne chen dunga ya ya cha ma su ne dunga ya ya de ne sam lo gi tho ne dunga ya yong go ro de ne za de ne gi dunga ya ge ne nam la je so le mi chen ne de ne ku ne na sem ba sem zu mo yu de nam la never say we semba o se delia ben nar semba be maga wa se delia chi pa chi je o sembe samlo cha go wa denige sem zuba se de shala never ki somebody denige samlo chi la control la ge se.
So with all of these, just as it says inside, the order of the English and Tibetan is slightly different. So there'll be a bit of hopping around in each of the afflictions. It starts with the objects that in relation to which anger arises. So the Tibetan starts there. So again, this commentary starts there. So I change the translation from basis to origin because these are the objects towards which anger may well arise. So we see there sentient beings, suffering, pain, difficulties, problems, all would be included there. Weapons, thorns, and so forth. So these should be quite clear in terms of sentient beings. This is all too often experienced by what others say towards us or do towards us or prevent us from doing. Weapons and thorns, so these would be things that cause us harm, physical harm and therefore pain. Weapons and so forth. And then so forth, we should take to refer more to the inner world. So our wishes not being fulfilled, meeting the wanted, separation from the wanted, and so forth. So these are some of the objects towards or from which, independence on which, anger can arise. So anger is then described as being an unruly mind, a hostile attitude. So unruly mind is that the mind is greatly disturbed, and the hostile attitude is that there is this wish to cause harm towards.
Da ngaya sedi jikta la tin de sen chiam nangi tomanda sanga la mine sem keng de toye namba chen ju ba os.
So then to the third, that of pride. Here I've needed to add a little bit in the second line. Pride is a puffed up mind based on the view of the transitory collection. It observes one's external or internal qualities that are high or low, good or bad, and engages them with an aspect of superiority. So I'll read it again because there's this bit added. Pride is a puffed up mind based on the view of the transitory collection. It observes one's external or internal qualities that are high or low, good or bad, and engages them with an aspect of superiority.
다치 잘라당 된게 돈에 다들 도시네 다 낭세도 야지 소수기에다 낭세 시다나 낭세 규유도 소수기 수보다 소수기 시엔다 내내기 삼다제 어등에 즉 나이 그 야보였으면 토와주스 나이 야가 이다가 예선배 삼다제 네 근데 시에 내가 토와요 섬섬다다 되는 수보에 내가 인지해요 사다 나 숙체해요 섬다 되는게 섬 미체네 셈 바지 캐비 넘버 전지라 한 캔데다 토에 넘버 두 셈이야 야등인데 아니 나야라 그래서
So pride is based on the view of the transitory collection. So we'll come to that shortly, the view of the transitory collection. But it's that one grasps at an I and therefore also a mind. So it's having this I and mind. Grasping at an I, one has pride in relation to oneself, as well as what is mine. So what belongs to the self. So this is the meaning then of based on the view of the transitory collection, one has pride, and pride observes one's external or internal qualities. I don't know where this level comes from. So external or internal qualities. So this, again, external to the person, internal being the person, so body or mental qualities that are high or low, good or bad. So then this would be, for example, seeing oneself as better than someone else, stronger than someone else, higher than someone else, better or good or bad than someone else. So the words that were missed, one's external, internal qualities that are high or low, good or bad, and engages them with an aspect of superiority. And then, as the translator, I've just missed this, so when Genla explained the transitory collection, I and mine. So I is in relation to oneself, mine what one owns. So this can be one's car, one's home, whatever possessions one has, but also one's inner qualities such as one's education and so forth. All of these things can be causes by which pride arises, or objects by which pride arises. These words that were omitted, based on high or low, good or bad. So this is ways in which we can feel superior to others. So this can be very broad, can be in relation to one's education, general education or education in relation to another topic, seeing oneself as superior to someone else. Or it can be many of the isms, say race, for example, seeing one's race as superior to another. And then, or in terms of one's physique or aspect of one's physique, seeing oneself as superior to someone else. Or in terms of the plethora of our possessions, seeing a possession as being superior to what someone else has. So all of these then are objects in relation to which pride can arise. Pride is an affliction that is very close to us in that it arises regularly and very easily. And this makes it quite difficult to recognize just because of the deep familiarity we have with it. So where one can recognize it is firstly, again, these words that are missing, it observes one's external or internal qualities that are high or low, good or bad. So high or low, good or bad, this is very broad. So when one may think, and again, it doesn't have to be all pervasive, but in a particular instance, for example, where one thinks, oh, my way of thinking on this topic or in this instance is superior to that person. So that doesn't mean in all instances one sees oneself as better, but right now, certainly. So it arises very easily, and watch for it. And you'll recognize that all too often it comes with this, my whatever is superior to that person or those people. And where it may be easier to recognize in hindsight is when anger has arisen, again, anger from frustration, annoyance, all the way up to rage and hatred, all included here, that anger all too often comes from our pride being challenged. For example, you're with someone and you're going out to a restaurant and you're deciding where to go and you have different wishes and you go where they're going. But if you have a bit of pride in relation to this person, you may be a bit annoyed that you are having to do what this person wants. And this annoyance comes from a view of superiority. And the superiority could just be you see yourself as more important than them, or it could see that your knowledge of what will be a better meal is superior to them. So in these ways, pride comes about. Really, in these ways you can come to recognize how readily, how easily pride arises. And all too often when anger is associated with pride, it will be stronger.
지게 전화 여바다 디중원이 임바지 뭐인이 수 임바지리아 삼다 어때든가 닝이 중거리 당하 디제 투글 SMB게 여바이나 디 뽑았어요 딩아야 말이야 나야세디 파쇼질 때시 통총으로 따진 딜레 등의 제 투글 SMB게 되는 셔버나 당 나야죠 또 뽑았어야디 뭐인이 수 소수교 전화요 어딘이 제 투글 SMB게 제 투글 나야세디 파쇼질 현다실 kwachi tu mardi ko khole de ngaya ngeji tu gure sembe samta me ngaya se jisa ngaya dan popo ni de skaba ro imba jela da de ji dan nyomo bari chaza le chumi ji se lo le na ta de ngui ni se mi du ba samta ha jue de le di yin de da ngaya se ju ngore chumi ji se le chumi ji ja li go le ngaya je ba le chumi ji lo le ya yu de na du ka le na da mi ro ba ji da yang ju.
In the same way, previously we looked at the affliction of attachment and aspiration as can be appearing similar, but one is in accordance with what will lead to happiness and one will not. So one's in accordance with reality and the other is not. So too here with pride and confidence or self-confidence. These two can seem similar, but they are quite different in that pride comes together, is preceded by improper mental engagement in the same way that attachment is. And improper mental engagement, whether with pride or with attachment, it serves to exaggerate the good qualities of something. Whereas confidence does not come together with improper mental engagement. Confidence or self-confidence. So with self-confidence, you can recognize a good quality that one has, but it's not being exaggerated. So therefore, it is being in accordance with reality. It's a clear recognition, I have this quality, but it's not exaggerating it. If there's exaggeration, then pride is likely to follow. So therefore, self-confidence differs from pride in that it acknowledges our abilities without inflating them.
Anda marik basede marik bani dinshi da rwade dirwasum marik bani dinshi da lede da kuncho ge ranshin la lo misawa misebe mishi bi yomo chenos.
This then we come to ignorance. Ignorance is afflicted not knowing, owing to a mind that is unclear with regard to the nature of the Four Truths, actions and their effects, and the Three Jewels.
Jizada dembashi ngui nisu hamogo ne lenjegi nisu hamogo konjo sumni nisu jenige rashindige lo misawa se lo dire so ngodi hamogo de mishi bigida jenige 미사오 몽디오 바지 데니기 삼다죠 갑라 가야마시바 몽디오 바디라 아니 데니기 요모 젠데라 가소리 마리팔라기리 에세지.
Ignorance is presented in relation to three objects: that one does not know them, one's mind is unclear with regard to their meaning. And the three objects are the Four Noble Truths. Just to say as an aside, in Tibetan it's almost always just the Four Truths. In English we always say the Four Noble Truths. And then action and the effects, cause and effect, karma, and the three jewels. In relation to these three objects, ignorance is a mind of not knowing. It can be ignorance of not knowing or confused ignorance in relation to these three, because the mind is unclear with regard to their nature.
난 태좀 세디 덴바서 숨라 미니 예담메 있는 민념바 오사데.
And the fifth is doubt. Doubt is to observe those three objects, the Four Truths and so forth, and think, do they exist or do they not exist? Are they a certain way or are they not?
지사다 덴바소 라미네시리 덴바소 숨라미네시리 다디 동아 덴바 군주 덴바 고고텐다 람덴시리 디솔리아 데람 데세도니 탈바세도 예나메나 삼베 삼다야다 디네기 안에 지게 다 탈바토의 람딘세도 예나메나 삼 두시네 삼다다 동아요의 윤주 다 지레다 녀모바세도 예나메나 디네 삼다베나 다 덴바숨라 디네기 미네 네 계속 미네 다 예다메 다 이나 마이스도 어디디 고미아디 다 탈바토의 람미레 말에 이나 말 지신의 인유 말 지디 인유에서 디네기 최선사와나 디 디소 최선세 송도와
Doubt in relation to the Four Noble Truths. One may think, for example, true sufferings really is, say, the suffering of transient happiness or pervasive suffering of conditionality. Is that really suffering? Or in terms of true origins, or is it really from karma and afflictions that one suffers? And is cessation, in terms of true cessation, is this possible or not? Is it possible to bring this to an end? And in terms of true paths, one's doubt may well be as to whether those true paths will be effective or even can be developed at all.
얘네 다 지소를 따와시오르다. 다 지소를 따와니 녀레니 풍보라 미네 마당의 시 다당 다그리 따위게 시르니 뭐제스.
Now coming to five that are views, the view of the transitory collection. So elsewhere this is translated as perishing aggregates. The view of the transitory collection is an afflicted intelligence that observes the appropriated aggregates and views them as a self or belonging to a self-thinking, I or mine.
지소를 따와셔야 녀린이 풍보라 미네 마당의 시 다단 다그리데 위시라 녀모제스 제단다 가는 줄이야 지다세디 지단다 소소랑아 세데 삼다제 나 삼데 나디 아니 다도 주바진베 삼다데 지다레 지다다 나이와 세데 삼다지데 나이와레 미제 나다도 주바진베 진바디 지다레 세 단다라 나다 나이와 강로라 미제 다도 주바진베 진바데라 아니 데네기 녀모젠데레 가소리 지다라기레 세제 다라 미세 다도 주바진바 나라 미네 나라비 나세다 다생가라 미네 다도 주바진바 나세 네이레 세죠로와데 나이루와 지시 나이루와레 미체 미게데 유디 나 거술면 나이루와레 미 네이 삼다데 나 다도 주바진 거래라레 제자지 네이 데버드버 진세요 마다 미야딩 네이 세미시네 진야 데버 다도 데버드마 다도 주바 진라고 그러다 다도 주바 진야데 네이 세 삼다지데 다 나디 다도 주바 진 거래 다도 주바 진야기 진야디 나디 다도 주바 진 거래 미야데라 나라 미나 미야지다 나이로알 미야세 미야데 니용 거래 술 미바이네 진야데 가르선 나디 다도 주바 진 거래라다
Reading it again. The view of the transitory collection is an afflicted intelligence that observes the appropriated aggregates and views them as a self or belonging to a self, thinking I and mine. So here the I or the self is grasped at as being truly existent, and what belongs to the self, and therefore having a truly existent self, there is that which belongs to the self, so the mine.
Nyelin pumbo la mini said, and Nyelin pumbo is not just such a Yawalin pumbo is in Dunga Dembashadi, such a Yawalin Chava Dunga said. Then Nyelin pumbo la mini, Jesada, mean, Delamine, didn't say some data, Naiva, Sinche Tatuba, Zingare, so do Daddy, Ma, Manju Daddy, Tumdo, Oma, the Yigi. Ma Sungsud Ma Sungore, Nyelin Pumbo said that Jeramo Hashiki Nazu Da said the Kasaning Da said you can assure says sometime Kashi to Pumbo Tiki Dares, Pumbo Dares, Pumbo Dares, Pumbo de Raya, Sugi Pumbo da, number ship Pumbo, and Kashi Sui Pumbo Dares. Kashi then Sui Pumbo the Dama, number ship Pumbo Dares said. On Ducine does Pumbo city down, Nyelin Pumbo city, Pumbo Dinalia. Sugi Pumbo, Toy Pumbo, Dushi, number ship Pumbo, Pumbo, Wada, Denigi Pumbo, Mabo, Kanruchi like me, Denigi Pumbo, Mabo, Kanru, and Dado Zimba killing or Chesan Da said, Chesan said, Dele Mine, Nala me said, Dele Mijet, and Dado Tuba Zingu Baza, Dele Andi, Shira Yomoch and Dela, Dushine, Gasuri, Chicta like the
Appropriated aggregates, something we looked at a few weeks ago, is what the aggregates, the physical and mental aggregates that are appropriated or taken due to all-pervasive suffering of conditionality. So the lower tenets will say that these aggregates are the self, and some may say that the self is even the form aggregate, but the majority will say the consciousness aggregate. So amongst the 5 aggregates, form, feeling, differentiation, compositional factors, and consciousness, the majority of the vast majority of the lower tenets will say that the consciousness aggregate is the self.
대시 강을 마릭 바셔야 시에지 지단 지대디게 마릭 바샤되요래 마릭 바래 호로 콩나라 마릭 바래 마릭 바 있는 지대에 수 켜고 말해 지대디게 바 마릭 바나 주디고 마릭 바샤되요래 야선에 마릭 바서 유 되네 미제 마시비게 몽보 로미사와 미시베지 셔럽지야 그래도와 직대디게 찾아 마릭바레 마리파리 마릭바 있나 직대 인고예요 말해.
So there's a relationship between the fourth and the sixth, so ignorance, and the view of the transitory collection. In that the view of the transitory collection is ignorance, or is an ignorance, but ignorance isn't necessarily the view of the transitory collection. In other words, ignorance is broader. So in particular, in this division in 10, we see ignorance in relation to 3 objects, but in other contexts, ignorance certainly would be would include the view of the transitory collection, because as we see in the first line, it is an afflicted intelligence, sorry.
나 직소라 따와라로 봐다 직소라 따와 그게 김제 가르라나 내가 직반이 미다바레스 직바세트 미다바로 고고래 예제래 끼치끼치 바지로 직반이 미다바 초니 두마이베 초세트 망보스님 뒤바지 고고지 제자 풍보세디 미다바다 아니 직다 세디 미다바레스 다 세디 끼치끼치 미다바지다 아니 지게 차시의 망보 뒤비 초비 초바진자다 되니게 다 될라 미시 아니 라예토버 다도 주버 진바인다 아니 직소라 따와라 그래서 지번이 미다바도 초반에 두마 임베 디 강라 따위시 디니 미다바다 뒤메이 최잠시 인지 따바당 직도 직벽에 간사니 메도스.
The text continues to explain this term transitory collection. Transitory means impermanent, and collection means multiple. So this is then in relation to the aggregates. So the aggregates are multiple, and they all change momentarily. So this is then the meaning of transitory and collection. The text continues, so the object that it views is a mere impermanent and manifold phenomenon. It is given the name view of the transitory collection to indicate there is no permanent unitary person.
균이 체험이된 다 따바실에 미제 아니 미비게 되니게 가서 다도 좀 짐바디 직다세 바레베스 디 마레세 올당도 직다세야 돼 직다세게 때 난간주 남비 응원에 직다 응원 소에 직다디게 다들 직다디게 다도 좀 짐게 다들 간에서 응원스네 지단 다디 가서 미유게 다디 그런 기지기 집이 미다바데스 아니 차시의 망보 차시를 땡기게 초바지래 제다다 차시를 땡는 주바 기지기지 집이 미다바지 다 세야디 미다바래 마도 치료비게 되게 다 집부어디 말에 유긴에 마도 봐 답이다디 말해서 당서 지디기 미유게 다 지어로다 낭비시게 지디게 다를 미네 지나다 나이월 미세 나디 간스리에스네 기지기지 집이 미다바 이게 차시의 망보 초비게 차실에 뛰는 줍두게지 초바지리 제자다 제자 치료비 시에게 되바나신 다 나세야데 말해서 올다 아주 지대기 미유 나세야 돼.
This last sentence here is given the name view of the transitory collection to indicate that there's no permanent unitary person or permanent meaning unchanging, unitary meaning single person. So this is in relation to non-Buddhist views. So we've come across this very recently now in Shantideva's teachings, where there are non-Buddhists. So I think this was this past week. We looked at non-Buddhist understanding of the person, and they say the person is unchanging. So this is contrary to the Buddhist view, which is that impermanent phenomena all change momentarily, and that the person is also not singular or unitary in that it is dependent on parts. So therefore, the view of the transitory collection is not in accordance with reality, because the person is impermanent and dependent on parts. So therefore, cannot be permanent or unchanging and unitary.
당한젤레 나는 주기 직다세베 나당가 유랄 미그리에세 지대기 미유게 나디 안내가 주기 치료비 되게 나디 말레스 당하는 주기 낭비게다 미다바다 안께 아니 차세 몽벌티네 초바치레 마도 초베게 나지레스 디여바리에서 올다 치료비게 시에게 나세데 다세데 딱바 유단견라 마되바 코로나 지부와 샤샤라 마되바 지부 유딩 다디 디여마레스 지단 지디기 미유 나이들 여고고리에서 여바치고리에서 올라 지디기 미세게 다 세주로 나여서데 나도 여고고리에서 치료비 되게 나도 여말와 나 딱봐 유진라 마되바 샤샤라 마되 나디 디니 나지 여말와서 제자 당한줄 다디 낭베시에게 직소라 따위게 직도아디게 가왈림이게서 나르미기레라와 제자 나디 간시레스네 기지기지 집이 미다바 차실을 뛰디겐지 소과 소안에 주디겐지스 인디 딘지 임바데 하고의 체도다 되네게 덴베 체도 지소라 따와시 민 따베게 따바워서 제자 직소라 따와스라고에 거란다 되네게 직다디게 미유게 나디 유다见了 되네 중화 안에 차시 도마 초바 기지기지 지바 임바디 하고의 체도 안직소라 따와라 해야지.
This view of the transitory collection is asserted by certain non-Buddhists, holding that the self is singular or unitary and permanent, unchanging. Buddhists do not accept this. They hold that this view is actually an afflicted intelligence, is not in accordance with reality. Rather, the self does change momentarily and is a collection of parts. It is not singular. The self certainly exists, but it does not exist as a permanent unitary person.
지소라 따와서 되니 뭐디 하고네 안 되니게 삼다도 삼도지 소수규래 끼기요 하고 해도다 어디든 요모디 끼기도 sempre 뭐 소야지 뭐 소투고로 받아 투여도 되네 안에 될이 녀부대야지 삼다 고고를 해서지 디스고로 받아 자뭐 되네 질이야 되네 요모 되네 라기리스 제가 되네 신자다 디 삼로지 원주규래 끼기도 민도 소소 도세 삼다이도 되네게 끼기요 바이나 어디든 요모 받은 아들이 끼기도 sempre 삼다 될이 녀부된 고를 해서지
of the 10 afflictions, of this presentation of afflictions into 10, we've looked at half of them. So these afflictions, none of us are a stranger to them. They abide within. Attachment, anger, doubt, ignorance, as well as the view of the transitory collection and pride. We've been presented here in brief, in a way that's easy to understand. For us, we need to develop mindfulness of our inner workings, to be aware of the arisal of the afflictions so that we can abandon them. And this was presented at the top of the page. Therefore, it is crucial that you rely on the antidotes, but to be able to rely on the antidotes, one has to, as it then says, become conversant with the mental afflictions. So to rely on the antidote depends on knowing the mental afflictions. So this presentation here is giving one the knowledge so that one can come to know the mental afflictions. But merely knowing this intellectually, understanding it is insufficient. One needs to recognize them within. Then one can apply antidotes and eradicate them. So we can conclude there for this morning, but there's certainly time. So if you have questions, then please feel free to ask. Venerable
Is it the same case for being in the form realm, getting to the formless realm, that they would only attain it inside mentally and not lose the body, or would they actually lose the body?
So a being who's abiding, a god in the form realm, who's wanting to develop the absorptions of the formless realm, would they be able to develop them while still in the form realm and developing the absorptions of the formless realm, but still be in the body of a form realm until death comes? Okay. Exactly that. So you could have the concentration or the absorptions of the formless realm whilst abiding in the form realm, with form in the form realm. Yeah. So the same as with the desire realm being. Andy?
Is this term unitary just the same as partless?
Partless.
Yeah.
Okay. So is unitary the same as partless?
차시라 마디바. 차시라 마디바. 차시다 차시 메디겐. 차시에 메디겐. 지부하세요.
So singular or unitary means not having parts or not dependent on parts. So yes.
But then, surely single, I mean, phenomena can be either single or multiple. Like, if you take the phenomenon as just self, take the phenomenon itself, it's a single phenomenon. Whereas, like, cat and dog is a multiple phenomenon.
So being a single phenomenon, not dependent on parts. Yeah? Because the meaning, because you asked, is the meaning, is it partless? So yes. It has no parts, it's not dependent on parts.
No,
that is the meaning of singular.
I thought there was a difference between single and unitary.
Well, the word is one. The Tibetan word is one. So how many fingers am I holding up? One, and that's the word. But we can ask, because there is the question, but I am one person. So does that mean I'm not singular? Well, I must be singular as I'm one person. Because this is what you're saying, right?
But it's single, it doesn't mean that it's still not dependent on parts. It still has parts, even though it's single.
So therefore it's not single, because it's dependent on parts. That is the meaning of single. Okay. Just a sec, Steve. I'll just at least inform Ken. Then also inchige doklat chiksena. Then also chik lokani yore. Then yes, some of the ni kiapa yore. The inchi chik deni. Then kongla kan some yore yankela bin. Then chashi yomare. Then the kari ni the shotgun. Then the chashi yomare. Chashi la thing yomare.
이거 여와 체험에 직체에 제거로
samlade inchi chikni kiapa yore. Inedi cheni hakona deni.
Yeah.
Steve?
So the view of the transitory collection, is that also what we know as ignorance of self-grasping?
So is the view of the transitory collection also the ignorance of self-grasping?
지다데 직달랍도 다세 말이 받쳐줘래. 이네 다세 말이 받는 직대 인비 거예요 말. 빼내가서 다데 직다세 디기 그 미세 유지를 라나 나를 미고래. 안에 나이와세 미고래. 나이와세 중에 세죠로 되네 삼단 거. 직대디가 삼가서 나세 삼단 안에 네세 삼단 거 직대디. 디 직대디 디 다세 말이 받해 거로. 그래서 유지를 뭔지 또 용어 또가 말이 바래. 근데 다시 말이 봐 이나 직대 뭐고 교회 가르치는 배나서 레이군제야 배네 동안 유 레다 녀모 받을 마시고 뭔가 말이 봐 저러와 니 가르미고스 레이군제 미고르데 이나 뭔가와 제가디 말이 바래데 나 직대 말해. 그래서 나 세다 네세 삼던 거 말와.
Depending on the context, it certainly can be. So the view of the transitory collection is in relation to the I and the mind, and this then is related to as the I as being inherently existent, and there being a mind that is inherently existent. So that would be the same. But where it can be different is when it's in relation to something other than the I or mind, in that all phenomena appear to us as being truly existent, causes, results. So there we wouldn't talk about the view of the transitory collection, we talk about grasping at inherent existence. So the view of the transitory collection is in relation to this transitory collection of the aggregates. Okay.
Yeah.
Venerable Stephen?
I do have another question, but I just, on Andy's question, I think it's often not clear that the person and the parts can be one entity, but not one. I don't think that concept's clear in our, education. So it gets us sometimes.
So, just to get it right, so it's not always clear that the person and the aggregates can be one entity, but not one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Jimasam Dachura. They can bring to 6 land.
So I can say something on that at another time. Yeah.
With relation to the coarse afflictions not being manifest at death and taking a form of birth, is it actually a possible problem that we could take a form of birth in an unwanted way because we've not attained definite emergence, then in effect naturally take a form of birth which would be unwanted? Is that a possibility, or is that just...
So if as a human being one develops the first concentration, but doesn't wish to be reborn in the form realm, but hasn't yet gone on to develop definite emergence, may one end up, against one's wishes, inadvertently being reborn in the form realm, as opposed to being reborn as a human being.
Isn't so me de Yena something Jezade so me in digging some big milia deva Yena me devi milia Delia Generous Begmarwa. Then they devi Yomo when you are the Bantu Marwa. There's something that we wishing you to Marwa. She says some double like Marwa. That did the answer Shirana machine, Debigi, that Debil had I meet a Yundian, because Yujetan, Chala Karine, Chasa, Nimbu Meva Tari, and it did develop a chapaki, Chapayungo Marwa. Then there's something double like Girhurwa. That I meet Jena Yahudu, some Jena, then Delia, and a Jun Dago Marwa, Mother, and a Yundian Dadigorwa. She said, Chapa de Dubi, you more about whom Marwa. This that the Shine Drupche, Shine Drugor, the Digi Garta and Devala Rapa and Della something she was sometimes she was this something go Mare. Shine Drupche Kartan Korea Gun comes to Gando Kiva and Ganga Rishas. Di Korea Dunga Genta. Then Korea Union but the Genta Gurova. Dine got come home at Kihoya Mare. Did call Nyomo Bachasan Party, judgment, but they were told to Gurova. Dugumare, just a garrison, cousin Devala Rapa, sometimes she was some tango, just don't call she in a Yanja Devala Hada, Devil had a milk killing matter, Susumela Kiola Yomada.
A person who's wanting to achieve definite emergence, in order to do so, they will meditate well on the faults of the Four Noble Truths, and with that motivation will give rise to calm abiding or generate calm abiding. Having generated calm abiding, they will continue to meditate on the Four Noble Truths in order to achieve definite emergence. If death comes before definite emergence has been achieved, not having attained the first concentration, they will remain in the desire realm. So that would be the way that a practitioner would go. Someone else, though, who wants to achieve the first concentration, they would not want to be reborn as a human being, because their method, let me look up the word, by examining the peaceful and coarse aspects of the desire realm and the first concentration, they would not want to be reborn in the desire realm. They'd want to be reborn in the first concentration. So they would be achieving concentration and then go calm abiding, and then go on to develop the first concentration. The practitioner, now to come back, to repeat what I said earlier, the practitioner who's wanting to achieve definite emergence wouldn't even spend the time going from achieving calm abiding to achieve the first concentration, because calm abiding is sufficient to achieve definite emergence and continue their spiritual progression.
Oh, yeah.
So there's no real risk of accidentally.
No, fortunately not.
Yeah, okay. Yes, yeah, that is.
And thank you, Venerable.